Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So recently I did revisit variant 1 Ultron's Assault, and I managed to explore it fully 100%, absolutely itemless. Now I do realize that I once again have a relatively large roster and therefore I'm privileged with my options, and it would have been a lot harder for me to do without such a large roster. However, I can still do my best to help you guys by providing tips and tricks and the strategies that I used basically. So now how this video is going to work, I'm gonna basically ignore chapter 1 because chapter 1 is by far the easiest, and I have also previously on my channel already posted full guides for all of the quests in chapter 1 and 2, but chapter 2 I still want to talk about a bit more. Mainly because there are many kind of like updated heroes, because we have had abundance of great Mystic champions come out recently, as well as addition of Warlock to the ranks of the robots and Guild in 2099, so on and so forth, can be helpful, and some of the things have changed and some of the things have definitely become a lot easier. Now I do personally think that chapter 1 of variant 1 is kind of like a warm-up chapter where you kind of for most part can bring in whoever in a lot of nodes and just kind of like blitz through it, because outside of power reserve, which can be cheesed, and maybe some increased power gain nodes, there wasn't anything too tricky in chapter 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through quest by quest, mark down a couple of MVPs for global nodes and a couple of trickier encounters on these lanes themselves, as well as the boss fight. So in quest 1 in chapter 2, the global node is Spite, so that already basically implicates that you want champions with power control, or at the very least champions who do not have access to any buffs, maybe outside of dexterity mastery. So my personal MVPs for these lanes were obviously Dr. Doom, because Dr. Doom is crazy good for pretty much everything in chapter 2, so he's one of the MVPs. If you have Dr. Doom now, you will have a lot easier time than if you try to complete this quest prior to him coming out. Magic is still by far one of the most actual MVPs, because again her power control is pretty insane, and Black Widow Clairvoyant also puts in a really solid amount of work here. Unfortunately, Warlock and Guillotine 2099, due to all of these increased power gains, are not really suitable for these maps. And when it comes to individual fights themselves, one fight in particular that I definitely remember annoying me was this power gain Green Goblin, because with increased power gain and Spite, if you end up triggering dexterity at the start of his special attack, he's basically back up to another special attack by the time the animation is over. So that was an extremely annoying fight. I personally kind of like blitz through it with Dr. Doom, because you can do these crazy loops and kind of make sure that even if Spite is active, you still have solid openings to deal a lot of damage and consistently spam your level 1s if you have to mitigate kind of like all the incoming power that he's getting. Other than that, one strategy that definitely came in useful in this entire chapter was parrying with magic like 15, 20, 25 times initially, till you build up to like a bar of power or bar and a half of power, and then you can immediately kind of like start off the fight with level 2, obviously after all of these parries. But that kind of like makes it a lot easier to get to level 2, and that strategy is going to be extremely important when dealing with another different magic later on. I think magic on Bane and also increased power gain. But all in all, this first quest isn't too bad overall. None of the individual lanes have too tricky globals, I believe. Maybe Buffet can be a bit annoying, but again, with all the mystics, nullification and power control, there was not too difficult of a time walking through these quests. The power gain lane was definitely the more annoying, I think. And when it comes to dealing the boss, again, basically he has backlash pulse, so you do not want to gain buffs on yourself. So any power control champions do this fight just perfectly fine. Magic, Dr. Doom, or whoever, any mystic power controllers worked a treat here. And overall, I don't think that chapter 2.1 is where many people got stuck, because overall that was not by far the more tricky quest. Now quickly moving on to chapter 2. Difficulty ramp up increased a bit, but the global node is actually the one that's kind of the easiest to ignore, because the global node in this quest is cornered, and if you avoid damage over time effects and or champions, then you were kind of pretty much fine and you didn't have to worry about the global node. However, you have one of the most annoying lanes in chapter 2, and especially a couple of Modocs. Now this is stun immunity and aggression fury, and many people have been struggling with these guys a lot. And the way to deal with these guys for me personally always has ended up being just take a high damage champion and hit opponent's block a lot. I think I used Sentinel for both of these MCOCs, because here we have Stun Immune, Aggression Fury 1, and here we had Masochism 1. And what I ended up doing is, I brought in Sentinel and exclusively only attacked MCOC's block, never attempting to parry, never attempting to make contact with him. Therefore, I could completely ignore the Aggression, Fury, or these Masochism nodes, and MCOC has absolutely awful block proficiency. Yes, the fight will take maybe a bit longer, maybe it does require some practice for you to kind of like get used to doing it that way, but all in all, that by far seemed like the easiest and the most consistent strategy I could come up with, at least when I was clearing it. And what I ended up doing was, just that, hitting MCOC on the block. Rest of the fights on that lane aren't kind of too troublesome. Now you have this Aggression, Fury, Stun Immunity Science adapted, and he can be tricky if you do not have any evade counter. However, for instance, Ghost critical hits cannot be evaded, so you can do extremely well on this particular fight using Ghost, or you can also utilize Nebula and gain up to 5 charges, since this droid, drone, whatever he is a robot. You can completely shut down his ability accuracy, and that will also let you have quite an easy time over here. Otherwise, these stun immune evaders can be quite nasty. And another fight that would kind of deserve a shout here is the Mephisto, especially because not many tech champions and not many mystic champions are incinerate immune. In fact, only kind of like a reasonable option here for most part would be Black Widow Clairvoyant. You get to your incinerate phase and then kind of try and drop your level 2s, deal as much damage as you can. Keep in mind that there's Limber, keep in mind that there's Cornered, so you do want to avoid finishing your combos with mediums. You cannot always rely on a parry, but Black Widow Clairvoyant also enjoys a massive power gain from Mephisto's aura. And she was quite a great answer for this fight. Additionally, you can always simply just try and bring in high damage output character and try and out damage and outplay that Mephisto's aura, or like use Ghost, which also kind of helps to mitigate some of that damage, doesn't rely on damage over time debuffs. All in all, I don't genuinely recall that Mephisto being quite big of a problem, but he might be depending on your roster. So once again, take a look at your incinerate immune options, and if you do not have any, you can get this guy down with like a maxed out champion that has decent damage output by playing very conservatively. But he definitely didn't like serve a role as kind of like complete roadblock. And I mentioned already the second MCOC and the Domino. Obviously, Domino, you basically just want to bring in as big of a tech champion that you can find in your roster, be that Ghost, be that Warlock, be that Sentinel, or be that, I don't know, rank 4 Star-Lord is also capable of handling that fight, but it's a bit more finicky there. I'm not sure if Stark Spidey can do it. Probably he can. So basically what you again want to make sure that you're bringing in tech champions so you never go unlucky, and you also have the class advantage, you can deal more damage. I personally ended up using my Warlock for this fight. And the boss on this lane is relatively simple. It can be brought down with pretty much anybody outside of robot champions, because the poison debuff that you get placed on yourself is not really all that potent, and if you slow down the fight, then not too much of a harm comes to you, I'd say. Now, the breakthrough node pretty much means that any champion eventually will hit incredibly hard, so you can even bring in your weaker hitting champions and the boss will still go down thanks to all of the accumulated armor breaks from breakthrough. In the old days, I used magic pretty much exclusively for this boss because she mitigated some of the damage from poisons with her limbo. If I had to kind of like pause down and make sure I don't get too many poisons, then that be it, I guess. But thanks to the power control and aggressive nature, she got that fight down quite quickly. She started the fight at least at like half health. And new champions, obviously Dr. Doom, you can spam your level 1s without Day's End and they do not make contact, so you will not get those poison debuffs. Or you can just bring in Black Widow Clairvoyant, put her on Poison Curse, steal a lot of power, drop a lot of hits with your level 2s, amp up that breakthrough damage, and you shouldn't have too hard of time here. So now that we have dealt with quest number 2, let's quickly jump in quest number 3. And quest number 3 probably has everybody's least favorite boss here, and that is exactly with who I will start here, because many people do struggle to find answers for this guy because he's extremely annoying and it's very tricky to find. For me personally, kind of finding success on how defeating this guy relatively easily was simply finding champions who have a single hit heavy attacks. So champions like Black Widow, Clairvoyant, Dr. Doom, who else we have? Warlock, Starking Hand, Spider-Man. Basically, any champion that has single hit heavy attacks could control the fight quite well. And the method in the madness was that you simply parry and use a heavy attack. If opponents understand, he cannot evade and you will not get that fatigue or weakness fatigue debuff placed on you. However, there's still like 15% chance, I believe, that he will place the fatigue debuff on you depending on his abilities. But thanks to the fact that your heavy attack is only one hit, you will be able to react and you will not kind of like lose health due to the multi-hit heavy attack or just being carried away in your combo. So the idea was always kind of like parry, land a heavy, see what happens. If he didn't place a fatigue on you, parry again, land another heavy attack. You rinse and repeat basically up until the point whilst you get a fatigue debuff, and as soon as you do get that fatigue debuff, you just kind of back away and let willpower heal to heal you up. Now those are long and annoying fights. They're certainly doable. As I said before, we did finish all of this variant without using any items, so certainly doable, obviously depending on your champions as well, I guess. All that being said, was there anything else I wanted to add? Yes, obviously Nebula is another great option if you have like a 6-star Nebula or a rank 4 5-star Nebula, because using a rank 3 5-star Nebula takes absolutely forever. It's honestly a very long fight otherwise. So if you have like a 6-star or rank 4 Nebula, you can definitely bring her in as a very good option as well. Get to like 6 of your passive shock charges and you're basically good to go. He's never going to evade, you're never going to get a fatigue debuff, and it's up to you to kind of like not mess it up. When it comes to trickiest lanes in here, well, the trickiest fight at the very least is going to be this Bane magic, and there are not many great options for this magic due to her insane attack and the limbo damage, and it's absolutely crazy. You can only realistically eat like 2 limbos like a maxed out 5-star character or something like that. So that limbo is really potent, or maybe 3. But yeah, either way, that's not something you want to do. So my go-to strategy personally here for these fights, once again, I brought in magic, and I ended up just parrying up until a point where I was almost at 2 bars of power, or power bar and a half, and then I just landed a combo. She obviously, with her increased power gain, because this entire chapter has 100% increased power gain, she obviously ended up getting her limbo, but I got to my 2 bars of power and my limbo activated at the same time, so each of the limbos kind of cancelled each other out, and then magic heals back up after the limbo is expired. But I have dropped my level 2, and from that point forward in the fight, the opposing magic with Bane doesn't really get to activate her limbo ever again. So that for me personally was the easiest strategy over here. Additionally, another good option obviously that you can use is Hood with the Ghost. So I mean Ghost with Hood synergy, that's what I mean. And you can just try and phase as much of the limbo damage you possibly can, but it will still be extremely tricky to land your special attacks because of the increased power gain, because as soon as you land your special attack, she's essentially going to go into the limbo, and you're going to end up eating some of the limbo damage, and she's going to end up healing back some of your special damage. So it's very hard task to launch your special attacks whilst you're using Ghost with Hood synergy. So I would personally recommend just sticking to a single hit mediums and then phasing out as much limbo and Bane damage if you get Bane on you as you possibly can. But all in all, it wasn't too tragical. Now, when it comes to dealing with this lane in particular, which is also annoying because it's Flare, and obviously the opponents there are quite troublesome. I remember that I did manage to solo that Electro using Warlock and heavy attacks, because each heavy attack, yes, you're going to get the damage back, but that bleed you place on opponent's quite potent, so he ends up taking a lot of bleed damage, and you just might kind of outpace the damage by a bit, but still lose majority of your health. However, that was certainly helpful. Another couple of champions who have a relatively good chance of walking out of that fight alive at like a rank 4 level or maybe 6-star level would be Iron Man Infinity War, because there are a lot of hits that do not make contact, so you do not get that energy damage back. Additionally, Yondu also has projectile hits in his basic kit, and the bleed damage again is amplified by the whole flare node, so that is quite helpful. So those are kind of like my go-to strategies there. Just bring in a tech champion that ideally has a lot of damage or time debuffs, or has some hits that are projectile and you can avoid taking damage back. That being said, we have Korg. I think for Korg, if I remember correctly, I just used Ghost, because Ghost is a fantastic option for that fight as well. Or if it wasn't Ghost, it was Black Widow Clairvoyant, or Dr. Doom, because Dr. Doom has energy attacks, so he doesn't take damage back from Korg, so that makes it quite a bit easier to play around the abilities there. And Black Widow Clairvoyant is also a fantastic option for flare nodes, because her level 2 heal depends on the damage that she does, and we all remember, or most of us remember, how great Rogue is on flare nodes, and the same effect kind of is for Black Widow Clairvoyant, because you deal a lot more damage, your level 2 effects are a lot more potent, so you end up regenerating a lot more health, and that is definitely a very solid option. Now when it comes to the side nodes, only other couple of fights that were quite annoying here was that Killmonger and Green Goblin. The way I got past Green Goblin, I just ended up using Warlock. What I did is I parried a whole bunch of times. I made sure that he has plenty of aggression regen active, and basically delayed the fight purposely to make sure he has like a lot of aggression regen active, and he would still be regenerating even after I'm in like 50 hit combo or something like that. And then basically I had made sure that he also has permanent heal block and power drain thanks to Warlock's abilities, so he was always under infection and under aggression regeneration, so he was consistently losing all of his power, and I was just able to hit him repeatedly, aggressively, and take him down. Other than that, Ghost with Hood Synergy again is a fantastic option, because you can simply just push him to level 3. Do not worry about aggression regeneration, do not worry about eating level 3. If anything, that level 3 typically helped you, because there are a couple of damage over time debuffs that you will convert into Furies, and a couple of regular debuffs that will help you willpower heal. So Ghost is a fantastic option as well. Sentinel can handle that fight to a decent degree, in my opinion as well. But yeah, my personal choice there was extremely hilarious Warlock fight. And when it comes to that Killmonger is actually quite a bit easier. Now, even though he also has aggression regeneration, his special attacks are much quicker, and you can actually evade them, and you can punish them well. So the fight itself is a lot more fluid. Obviously, you want to avoid taking any damage back from reverb, so your go-to strategy should be champions with armor breaks, even if it's just the Sentinel again, or Warlock, or whoever else you can bring. I think in one of my old exploration videos I got that guy down with like a 6-star Iron Fist or something like that. So long as his armor is broken, basically you will be able to deal with that fight relatively well. And I think that kind of covers the trickiest fights in this chapter, and we are ready to move on to chapter 3. Now, I do realize that the video is getting a bit long, but I'm going to try my best to cram in as much as I can, as quickly as I can. So 3.1 was not the worst node, was not the worst path. What I did for 3.1, don't even remember everything exactly, but the actual MVPs haven't changed that much, at least here for me, over the times. Now, many people do like to absolutely cheese a lot of these quests with Thing and with champion synergy. I personally kind of went out relying a lot more on Quake, for instance, on this masochism, because here the global node is masochism, but obviously all the individual nodes differ. This magic, for me, personal choice was Quake. Quake dealt with it relatively easily, and she is also able to bypass masochism if you're charging heavy attack at the time. Now, you do have these Oscillate and Starburst lanes, and genuinely I did not use Gladiator Hulk for these, because Gladiator Hulk is one of the best options, but what worked out better for me was bringing in Corvus on Suicide Masteries and just playing at 1% health, because so long as you do not run out of charges, Corvus will not die from Starburst damage. And then at the same time, you will never run out of charges if you're basically just striking opponent's blocks. So there was a lot of me going after opponent's blocks, making sure I do have some charges left, and that is quite frequently what I did in Chapter 3 instead of using Gladiator Hulk. Now, I did use him here and there, but Corvus is extremely good alternative to Gladiator Hulk to deal with this Starburst damage without throwing revives at it and without dying. So keep that in mind, especially for later nodes when you see Starburst or Degeneration as well. Now, that all being said, all of these aspect of Chaos nodes I simply cheesed with Heimdall synergy. So the go-to strategy there is get hit a lot till you basically die or are left on 1%, and then stall and procrastinate the fight up until the health bars switch thanks to aspect of Chaos node, and then just tap the opponent once and you're done, home clear. You have finished the fight with 100% health and opponent's dead, and it's very easy and very quick. So these two lanes on the right side are by far like the easiest ones. Now, when it comes to aspect of evolution, opportunist, and mainly poison path, the path itself is quite long because of aspect of evolution, and you do take a lot of block damage if the fight goes on for a while. But all in all, you're just stuck in any poison immune characters that you have of Science and Cosmic Glass. Really, it didn't kind of like matter too much. I think I brought in like Red Hulk, She-Hulk, a couple of other things, and yeah, it just worked out. There wasn't anything kind of like too specific. Be wary that you will not be critting like at all within like half a minute in the fight because of aspect of evolution, and block damage will be crazy. But pretty much any poison immune champions can more or less get through it and deal with those fights. Now, Iceman obviously will eat away a lot of your health, so that is a very costly fight where to mess up, because you will survive if you go in, I think, with like a rank 4 or rank 5 character, and you're still gonna have some chunk of health left. However, if you go in with like half dead character, you will obviously not survive the initial cold snap damage, so be very careful in the Iceman fight. Now, when it comes to the boss itself, boss was super easy. It has that impart node from 5.4 Ultron and Masochism, so the only condition there was that you do not want to place any debuffs on the boss at all whatsoever, ever and ever. So bring in champions like Red Hulk, champions like She-Hulk, I don't know, Angela, or effectively whoever you want to bring in. Just play the fight as if the opponent is stun immune and do not debuff him, and then you will be perfectly fine. Another great option for these fights quite often can be, especially for this fight, was Heimdall, because Heimdall has permanent access to True Strike. So once you drop your first special attack, you can completely gotten rid of the Ultron's evade, which will often be the reason why you mess up and gets hit in the face. And Heimdall's kind of like base toolkit doesn't really damage Ultron, so you can make sure the fight is long, but it's also going to be much safer and easier if you use Heimdall in this fight. But other than that, yeah, any champion that doesn't debuff much works. And now let's quickly jump to Quest 2 in Chapter 3. Now, I am conscious this video is getting long, so I'm trying to squeeze by as quickly as I can. Let's take a look at the global node. The global node here is Pilfer Regeneration, and this is really annoying node. Initially, it doesn't seem like that big of an issue, but it will become much more annoying than you'd expect, especially if you want and like to use your Corvus, because they can also eat up your Corvus charges. So any fight where you bring in Corvus is kind of like a 50-50 shot, and you never know how many of your charges will be left for you. But on the bright side, there is always quite early good options to acquire these Corvus charges. We can see that there's Evade, Tech Mutant, Evade, Avenger and Auto Block, Avenger and Tech. So there's basically Corvus charges everywhere. So bringing in Corvus still can be a very decent and potent kind of like an idea. Now, when it comes to the nodes themselves, Spite, it's not the most tragic thing, especially because you do not worry about Spite on the droids because they don't have level 3. Also, the Spite does not disturb you all that much, even though they are consistently gaining power. It's not like an absolutely crazy amount if you are playing conservatively. Additionally, Corvus has a power drain on level 2. So a lot of the work here on the left side of the map for me was done by Corvus. Captain America Infinity War also works very well for a lot of this stuff if you want to kind of like bring in different options, because he doesn't have any debuffs and he can parry for days and he can wait out the special attacks without having to like dex a lot and try and actively bait them out. She-Hulk is also a very fantastic option for a lot of these fights because of Spite, and she has that power petrified debuff on level 2 that can help you completely ignore Spite. Additionally, She-Hulk's own abilities let opponents throw special attacks a lot quicker, and they will be more friendly throwing special attacks, so Spite is immediately not as dangerous anymore. And yeah, again we have annoying MODOK, which again I think I just brought in Captain here, so it wasn't too bad. And then we are moving at top of the map. After this Spite we have Aspect of War champions, and by far the best option for these Aspect of War lanes, unless a very jacked Corvus, was Quake, because Quake can completely ignore basically the Aspect of War and you can just Quake everything down here in the middle. Now that was not what I always ended up doing, because yeah, sometimes it was Corvus and just quickly finishing the fights off using Corvus and Suicide Mastery, sometimes it was Quake, but all in all these fights are quite tricky. But if you have the Cap, the Corvus, the Quake, you shouldn't have too much of a trouble overall. And a lot of Chapter 3 Quake is kind of like one of the MVPs and one of the most obvious choices. Now I do realize that everybody likes playing Quake, but I also cannot escape the fact that that is who I used for quite a bit of it to get by it Itemless, because she was the best option. There was no other similarly great option for that. And if you think about it, then a lot of Cosmic and Science champions, maybe outside of like Human Torch and like Thing strategies in these variants, haven't really changed within the past year, because we have gotten some great Cosmic champions, let's say Captain Marvel movie version for instance, but thanks to Pilfer Regeneration it's extremely tricky and unreliable to use her in these quests, because quite often her furies just get eaten up by Pilfer Regeneration. Opponents end up getting a full bar of power, and yeah, it's definitely seems that in this quest in particular a lot of old school is the good school, I guess. But yeah, the right side of the map, the right side, the most annoying lane by far was this Degeneration, and there is no way around it, and there's nothing really you can do to escape that Degeneration damage, and that is the most annoying thing, because the Degeneration is very potent, and especially for instance this droid is very tanky. So I had to restart this lane time and time again, and it pretty much required me to have absolutely perfect execution, a fluid fight, a lot of kind of like damage going in there to be able to survive and get past this stuff Itemless, because these degen nodes, they bypass like Galk's face me, so it's very annoying. I did end up again using Corvus for quite a bit of it, and just striking opponent's block and making sure I do not run out of charges, because so long as you have at least one charge you will not die from damage over time effects. Now Hyperion was super annoying fight, still Void is by far the best option here, because you can just kind of like slow play the fight out and wait till your petrified debuffs kick in, and then effectively that's just a normal Hyperion. You have fight under control. So yes, even a 4-star Void is a fantastic option for this Hyperion. Another great option would be going YOLO with either Luke Cage or OG Tor. OG Tor actually did put in quite a lot of work through these maps as well, because you can just try and stun chain the opponent and chain stun the opponent. Yes, that's what I meant. And yeah, get him down that way. But all in all, if you want to have this fight normally, Hyperion with 100% increased power gain plus Pilfer Regeneration, no, it's not happening. That fight is going to reach a level 3 very quickly, and you have to be on board with it. So you can either try and reverse the power gain that Hyperion has, or just deal as much damage quickly as you can, because it's still a very tricky fight. Now these Starburst lanes, I still largely use either Corvus or Gladiator Hulk. Gladiator Hulk is obviously one of the MVPs under Starburst because his face main is active all the time, so it mitigates any cheap damage you take, not just from Starburst. So it is very forgiving for a lot of mistakes. And even though Ant-Man does glance like crazy and the fight takes a while, he's still by far the best option there. But again, do not forget Corvus' ability not to die, well, basically. And if you do not have Gladiator Hulk, then Corvus will be your best friend, and you just kind of need to rely on striking opponents' block a lot. Now, when it comes to the boss, this boss, thanks to Extinction Protocol node, which basically increases his power gain every time he fills a bar of power, that fight is going to go downhill fast. Effectively, after like 50-60 hits, he's going to be gaining a full bar of power or a power bar and a half per every medium hit you land. So you can use any champion you want in this fight, whoever you have left on your team that has survived. You do not need to bring in specific counters. The only and the one and only thing you want to make sure is that the champions deal as much damage as quickly as they can. And that is it. Ideally, if you are comfortable avoiding level 2, that will be extremely useful if the fight kind of like stretches out a bit, because a single hit or 2 hits will push him to a level 2. But here the idea is just to hit as hard, as fast as you can, and then perhaps bring in a second champion to finish out the fight. Because these guys are very, very tricky once their power gain goes up a lot. And finally, the last quest, and I can let you guys go, and this will be it for today's video. Once again, my apologies for keeping you guys this long. I am trying to cram in a lot of information in a single video here. So, the last map is probably the trickiest. Now, the global node is Fisticuffs, which is actually helpful, because you can run Suicide Masteries and get no drawbacks really outside of recoil, because the Fisticuffs also mean that you can basically not be debuffed at the beginning of the fight, so you will not have bleed or poison debuffs on you. Now, the one champion that this really disturbs though is Corvus, because Corvus effectively will have 0 charges no matter how many charges he actually has throughout the entire map. So this is the map where you kind of throw Corvus out. Corvus is still usable if you are willing to fully boost and add in some cosmic power boosts, but since I wasn't doing that, for me Corvus was out in the dumpster and I had to find different plans. Now, when it comes to dealing with this buffet, Electro and Korg, 100% the MVP is Quake. Those are by far the best options. Now, there are other champions that can deal with these fights. You need to be wary that the buffet is very, very strong, but that is who I personally used. Again, remember, champions that do not make contact or have energy damage as the base hits to be the champions to deal with this fight. So you can, for instance, bring in Human Torch and easily deal with that Korg there, because Human Torch, all of his hits are energy hits, so he'll bypass Korg's damage back. So yeah, keep those things in mind. That's very important. Once again, here is showcased why. So for instance, Human Torch would be a perfect counter for the Korg. The rest of the champions in buffet aren't too bad. A lot of them are mystics, so you can also bring in Captain America Infinity War, because he doesn't generally buff a lot and he can bypass the unstoppable, for instance here on the Juggernaut. So Cap was used quite a bit on this lane as well. Now Mephisto obviously is dealing incinerate damage. Still, again, Quake was by far my go-to option for a lot of this. And this Hulk is going to be one of the biggest problem fights, because Aspect of War Hulk is stacked here. He's like a mini boss here, and he does provide a lot of problems. Now, the best options for this guy certainly can be either Quake. If you do not like Quake or are tired of hearing Quake all the time everywhere, then also consider She-Hulk and or Spider-Gwen, because Spider-Gwen can effectively combat this Aspect of War in 2 different ways. She can either spam her level 1s and basically prevent opponent. You can prevent opponent from gaining a bar of power, therefore they will not go unstoppable when throwing special attacks, because they will not be throwing special attacks, right? And She-Hulk obviously can also play slow debuffs, but you do have to be kind of like careful and very wary, and that's still quite a bit of a tricky fight. Other than that, just bringing in champions that do a lot of damage and trying to play your ass off probably is the best solution here, because yeah, Aspect of War gets very tricky very quickly. And again, here Champion and the Thing synergy would work extremely well, because the Thing is also able of nullifying opponents' unstoppables and cancelling them out and finishing out the fights quickly, which is exactly what you want with Aspect of War. Now, when it goes to the right side of the map, there don't think was anything overly tricky. This domino wasn't too bad. It has Spite on, but still, at this point you have like your Cosmic and Science options here, so that quite frequently for many players is probably one of the more stacked kind of like roster parts. But yeah, I don't remember exactly who I used. Oh, now I do. I used OG Thor, but OG Captain America Infinity War is also working fantastically for these fights. But yeah, OG Thor did a lot of heavy lifting here. Now, when you look at these lanes on the right side, there's quite a few Mystic champions with the Spite active. So the champion that I used was Human Torch, and he performed fantastically. And here in the middle, where you have Starburst, and then after Starburst you have Pilfer, and I think there's Starburst once again, Tranquility and Starburst. Obviously Gladiator Hulk was a fantastic option. Dormammu is a Mystic champion, so Human Torch was a great option as well. But all in all, the map itself, I guess, wasn't too bad. Here now we have Korg with Tranquility and Starburst. I think that was Gladiator Hulk again, which is one of the MVPs all across the board in Chapter 3 here. And the final boss, the key thing is the EMP modification. All of the other nodes don't really matter nearly as much. So what you need to do is make sure that you have a champion that is shock immune or is benefiting from shock passives, because being able to deal with shock debuffs won't help, because EMP modification is passive shocks. So I personally use Thing without any synergies, without anything, and I think I one-shotted this guy pretty much vast majority of the time. So it does require very kind of like patient playstyle, and never finishing your combos with 5 hits, making sure that your rock stacks are up. In case you do slip up, then you go unstoppable and you don't immediately get comboed to death. But yeah, Thing is a fantastic option because Thing is fully shock immune. Now, another champion that can very well easily be used is Electro. Obviously, Electro is squishier, it's a 6-star, let alone even as 4-star, but that is who I remember using back in a day. I have one-shotted this guy with a 4-star Electro as well, so if you have a 5 or 6-star Electro, he's a fantastic option for this fight as well. Gladiator Hulk, once again, is a great choice here. And another interesting way how to get relatively good results in this fight is simply try and not Dex, or even remove Dex altogether, and bring in a champion that doesn't debuff, and then just deal with level 1 by trying to parry it. And then you can use champions like Red Hulk, Captain America Infinity War, also dealt quite a bit of damage. Because yes, the EMP modification in its essence relies on you gaining more and more buffs. Now obviously, because Ultron's beam is a projectile, you will gain a dexterity buff every time you try to evade it. But if you do not evade it and simply try to parry that projectile, then EMP modification damage is going to be vastly kind of like taken out of the picture. You will be taking more block damage obviously, and you will end up dexing if you have the master active now and then, but you will be able to survive much longer in the fight, and you can actually get by this fight without shock immune champions if you just try and play around the dexterity, and if you switch to parrying all the special attacks. So I figured that's another worthwhile thing to mention. All in all, I definitely must say that for Chapter 2, my MVPs recently doing it were like Warlock and Dr. Doom. They did fantastically with vast majority then, and I still used Magic for a whole lot of things. So Magic was great. And for Chapter 3, by far the biggest MVP still is Quake, because Quake bypassed so many of these nodes and these restrictions. Then OG Thor was surprisingly useful. Corvus for first 2 chapters, not as much for the third one. Obviously here and there I used Gladiator Hulk, even though I did not end up using Gladiator Hulk nearly as much as I thought I would. And yeah, OG Thor, She-Hulk, Red Hulk, all of those champions did a lot of work as well. Now, all of that being said, I do apologize for keeping you guys this long. This video has been going on for quite a while. I hope this has been useful, because this has been personally requested in multiple streams recently from several of you. So, hope this helps. If it did, then hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya!